Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today to catch the latest enhancements of Dundas BI. My name is Jeff Hainsworth, and I'm a Solutions Architect here at Dundas. Today, I have the pleasure of walking you through new functionality introduced in our latest version, 5.0.1. And as always, we'd like to welcome your questions as we go through this webinar. If you want to type comments directly into the panel, you may. And we'll also have people following and giving answers as we go along. If your question's a little bit more complicated, we'll get back to you via email in the short term. Also, if you'd like to take a note of my email address there at the bottom, you are welcome to email me questions directly if there's anything that you see that you'd like more explanation, or if you just want to say hello. This webinar will be recorded, so it will also be available on our webinars page at the end, so you can watch it again on demand. In terms of the agenda today, I'm going to give you a really quick introduction to some of the scope and scale of Dundas BI, and focus a little bit on just what a Dundas release means and where this comes from. You might actually find this quite interesting. Finally, we'll go into some areas of focus of what we've done with this release, and then finish off with some big highlights. For those of you who are coming to us and have never seen Dundas BI before, I want to give you an upfront warning that this webinar probably isn't for you. The highlights will certainly be interesting if you want to see some of our capabilities, but it might make sense for you to go back and look at some of our older videos as well, as Dundas BI is a fairly mature product, and there's a lot of things that you're probably missing at this point. But please do stick along if you'd like. But for those of you who are new to Dundas or maybe not too experienced at it, I do want to give you a quick intro to just everything that we're offering. So as you can see, our product is very large in terms of scale. Right? Dundas BI is both a BI and an analytics platform, and you should understand that it is an end-to-end system. If you look in the middle of the screen that I'm showing you right now, you can see that we start with data preparation, right? Collection, moving data from between different sources, over to data analytics, where we can augment and extend the data that you have already. Finally, giving you building capabilities with data presentation. The most common that people tend to do are dashboards, but we do also have reports and scorecards as different medium that you can use. And then once the content's created, you can collaborate with other users. So it's not just about building dashboards. The other thing you should understand is a system like Dundas has a full enterprise level administration behind it. And driving everything, there is a full and extendable API as well. So a developer using our platform can come in and modify just about anything that you see. The rule of thumb is if you see us doing something in the UI, you could do it yourself using code. So what I'm showing you today is Dundas BI 5.0.1. Now, why am I talking about this? I want you to understand what the numbers mean in here. The 5 is, of course, a major release, right? And Dundas releases a major basically every year. The 0 in between is kind of a major minor, if you will. And the third number, the 1, is basically indicating that this is a minor release. Now, what's interesting about this minor release is we've added about 100 new features to it, and they're completely driven by our community. And it's one thing that really sets Dundas apart from a lot of the other BI vendors out there. Not only do we focus very heavily on community asks, but it's also very reflective about how much we invest back into our product. A big chunk of Dundas investment goes directly into R&D, and the fact that a minor release of Dundas BI contains over 100 features really speaks to just how passionate we are about developing this product and growing it. Now, when it comes to growing our platform, you can help. You can actually log into our support site and make requests, and I do encourage you to do so. So if you haven't seen this, I'm going to show you very quickly where this area is, because this is really important to us. So if you haven't, run over to dundas.com/support and create a support account. Let's go there now. So once you're on the site, log in, and there's two things I want you to be aware of. First of all, you can search for release notes, and we do publish every change that's been made. So as I won't be going through absolutely everything today, I do encourage you to take a look at the different changes that are being made to Dundas BI if you want to get a holistic view. The other thing that you should be aware of is the My Account button here at the top. And if you click on that, you can actually see that there's a section here for My Issues. It's actually Issues and Features. And you can see that here are a bunch of feature requests that I've made recently with the platform, including all the status. And you can get this too. So if you're going to come in and make requests of us, you can track it and see what changes are being made. So highly recommend that you take a look at this. So let's get on to some specifics. And as I showed you earlier, Dundas is an end-to-end platform, and the 100 or so features that we've added to this platform are spread across the entire application, from the home page all the way down to enhanced data discovery, new visualization capabilities, administration, configurations, embedding, and even API options. So unfortunately, there's no way that I'm going to be able to show you all these new features. So most of the focus that I'm going to show you are going to be on the visuals, things that you can see and observe the reasons for doing it. So let's start working with some of these new visualizations. I'm going to use a basic data set coming from SQL Server, and I'm going to use this for most of my examples, I believe, which is this one here. So let's start by dragging in all of our countries that we have. So you can see by default, right, Dundas comes up with a table, and I can see every country. Now one of the new visualizations that we've added is the word cloud control. So you can actually visualize the different country names in kind of a cloud format, great for kind of marketing or getting people excited, that type of visualization, rather than doing any really deep analysis. To take a look at the visualization tab, there's a couple of things that you can add to this. So as an example, text size. So maybe I want the size of the text to be driven by our cost of sale. I drag that in. And the color, let's drive that by our revenue. So I'm actually binding two metrics here, similar to the bubble chart, if you guys have worked with that one. If I take a look at the properties, under look, you can see that of course you could customize the palette that we're using. So you could make this look identical to any sites that you're looking to create. But I'm going to use the color rule, so I've attached revenue to my text color. Let's add a color rule to it, and let's customize it. So right now you can see that I'm defaulting by starting at a light blue and working my way up to a darker blue. And you could of course set this to be whatever you wanted. Right? So really nice to be able to get that type of visualization. Another one is a request that came from our users that has to do with filtering. So if I were to go and add a new filter to the dashboard, by the way, you may notice that this menu is a little bit different from what you've seen before. We've decided to take a lot of the more commonly used filter types and make them the main, allowing room for more. That way you can get to the ones that you're going to use a little bit quicker. Whereas if you need one of the more advanced ones, they're still there for you. So if I just add a value filter, and come in here, and right now you can see I'm filtering on country. Now if I hit view, this is the standard behavior that a user gets. They can come in, they can choose the country that they want. Now we've had users ask, for example, if I type in Canada, you can see that it's doing sort of a contains search. So CAN, Vatican shows up. Right? And not everybody likes this type of behavior. So we've added a couple of new options to the parameter control itself called search operator. So now you can actually come in and say, okay, do they have to actually type in a full name before it shows up in the search? Start with, end with, right? Matches completely. So nice little options here for you to cater the end user experience a little bit more than you did before. So now that we got this wonderful dashboard ready to go and published to our users, let's check it in. Okay. And the user is now viewing the dashboard, and they decide to use the revisualize command. Right-click revisualize, and they decide they want to see it as a point chart. That's a bit odd way to show this. Okay, let's see it as a table. Fine, I can get the raw data. We've now added an option so that the user can revert back to the original with all of the settings. Because you've taken the time to customize that word cloud. We've added color rules, we've added styling, things like that to it. And the revisualization shouldn't throw those away. So this is a nice way for the user to get back to the settings that had originally been done when viewing on a particular visualization, which is a really nice change. Go back to edit for a moment and check this out. And if you're like me, you might want to do things like stylized buttons. I tend to do this a lot on some of the more complex dashboards that I build, where I'll make a button larger, and I may come in here and remove the text completely because I want to add other elements to it. For example, if I go back to my data, and let's add our revenue in here and show that by, just say date, that works. I have a line chart. And I might want to shrink it down, and I might want to show that as part of the button. Something like this. And then I might want to have my own custom text appearing exactly where I want it. So I add a label, right? Or I might add a state indicator to this as well, right? And this might be my sales department. And typically you'd have a bunch of these buttons. Really great if you want to show kind of summary level data for many departments where you build the data visualization almost right into the navigation. It's a pretty cool concept. So let's change the color, make this stand out a little bit more. Doesn't really matter what I choose here. Maybe something a little bit brighter though. Okay, so that's our button. And I would probably go and add an interaction to it, right? Which is something you've been able to do forever with Dundas BI. So if they click that button, maybe I'm going to navigate them over to another dashboard, or maybe I'm going to show another layer and have content appear that wasn't there before. But here's the problem. If I hit view, you see I can only click that button if I go right here into the corner. Why is that happening? Because I've got content sitting on top of the button, and that content is basically eating up the click of my mouse and not allowing me to hit the button that's underneath. Right? Well, how do you solve that? You put the button on top, but then I'm not able to see my content. Right? This makes no sense at all. If I say bring forward, right? So I need it to sit behind so that I can show this content. So in the past, the best way to get around this was to add a script in order to remove the clicks from these two elements. Well, now we've actually added a new property to the properties grid so that you can remove the actual click event directly with just a single check mark. And that property is right here under actions called ignore mouse. So if I enable that on this label, and then I go back to view, I can now click through the label or the image or whatever you're adding to this button. Save you a little bit of time, and again, this is kind of a neat style that I do recommend people approach. A little bit different. Here's another request that came from a lot of you. So let's take this word cloud that I started with, turn it into a table just for a moment, and simplify this a bit. So let's just start with country, and I'm going to replace this with our sales office. So in this data set, sales take place in 3 different cities, right? Hamburg, Perth, and Toronto. Let's start by filtering this out so that I only see Toronto's data. And I'm also going to attach in terms of rows every city we sold to. Okay. Now let's turn this into a map. Revisualize, map, just right there. And Dundas will look at the data and choose an appropriate map. So it's just downloading, in this case, a world map for me. So some new options that we've added to the visualization is under paths. So you can now attach lines between locations. So in my case, you have cities where people are buying products online, right? And you have sales office where the purchase is actually being taken place. So something I might want to see are draw some lines to connect the different cities so that I can see how far away people are coming in order to buy my product. It might help with the positioning of some of my new offices that I'm going to open. So let's start. You see this is a new property here called symbol start name. So that's going to start as a city. Now you might want to add some context to this. You could drag something like country or continent into this if you wanted, so that it's a little bit more relevant, because you will have duplicate city names in some cases, right, in different locations. Or counties might be another example where that happens. All right. Let's add sales office as my end. And you can see in doing that, it's going to draw lines between where the cities took place and where the sales are happening. Right? Great. That's kind of cool for me to see. Let's set the color. So that's going to be based on my revenue. So that way I can see how much money is coming from each of these different areas. So you'll see it'll actually go and color it. Now again, I've got a lot of data here. It's a bit much. So let's simplify this out a little bit. Let's start with our look. And I'm going to set the default symbol to just be transparent. Let's just get rid of these cities on here. And of course I'm setting the wrong property. I meant to do the fill. There we go. So there's the city's gone, right? I just need the general location. I don't really care about the actual city name in here, right? Then let's take a look at our binding. So just like the word cloud that I showed you before, you can see there's a path color rule. And you'll see that these properties are eerily similar. So I could actually say, all right, start at a transparent, which is that, and then work our way over to another color. And you don't have to do just color rules. You can also do the size of the line if you wanted to as well, right? I could actually go in here and say, you know what, the size of the line is also going to show my revenue. You want both, just to really accentuate the point. And you'll see those lines will start resizing. And in this case, I don't think that's really what I was going for, but I just wanted to very quickly see where most of my traffic was coming from. So if I hit view, I can see the map, I can zoom around, and just start getting a picture based on those colors. So by the fact that I've gone and turned this into a transparent line, it's basically gotten rid of most of the small sales that were taking place and really simplified it out. Also shows me a really big problem here, and that's most of our sales are taking place in Europe and other areas and not North America, yet they're all buying from the Toronto office. So maybe this is a good call for me to be adding an office somewhere else or somehow redirecting traffic. The other thing I wanted to point out, and this is something we added to version 5, but I don't see a lot of people using it yet, and it's the show street level map. So if you check that off, you can choose a map provider. And one of the best ones, just because it's free and easy to do, is this one called Carto, actually, is the one I meant to select. So this will allow you to do street level mapping as well, if you really want to get right into the details of where it's coming from. So another thing that's kind of neat to check out if you've got data that's appropriate for this. So back to edit mode, I've got one more visualization feature that I'd like to show you. And to do this, I'm going to clear up some space on this dashboard. We don't need all these other pieces. So let's go to our data, and I'm going to add a time series chart, similar to what I had before. So revenue is in here. Looks like I can use that as we had it. Let's bring month in. So you've seen this. Let's turn this into a bar chart. And one new control that we've added, it's actually a filter control. So if you go to filter here at the top, it's called play axes. I'm sure you guys have maybe run into, there's a TED Talk that was really popular a couple of years ago where a gentleman did an animated bubble chart where he showed all the changes due to social economic conditions over time. And you could see the bubbles, all the different countries, poverty, things like that changing. This is kind of that idea where a user can come in, set up this filter, and actually play the data year to year. And it doesn't just have to be years. I could do months, I could do day changes. I could even add this to text and show country by country filtering over time. So it's really cool. Now one thing about my data, it's a little bit older. So I don't want to show 2015, 2018. We're going to get a bunch of blank data. So let's go to the properties here, and there's a shown members property. My data, I believe, starts in 2012, 13, 14, 15. So let's just leave it at that. And now when I hit view, you can see that a user viewing this dashboard could hit the play button and actually see those changes over time in order to get an animation. And you could control this a little bit more than I'm doing. I'm just kind of giving you the concept. But kind of anything's possible here. It's really nice to be able to do a custom animated transition over time. And it really is as easy as just adding a filter control to the dashboard. Now play with the customizations here. There's a lot more you could add to this. Don't keep it as simple as I did, but for time's sake, I'm just trying to give you the idea. So that's it for the dashboard features that I was going to show you today. The next one is going to be on the data cube. So let's just make a blank data cube. So we understand that some of you might not be too familiar with the data cube layer if you spent most of your time just on the dashboards. It's very common in Dundas to have a more technical person setting up data for you and then having someone else go and build the dashboards. But if you haven't seen this layer, the whole idea is the data cube is kind of the Dundas's transformation, data preparation, metadata management, all those pieces in one. It allows you to just bring in the data, clean it up, get it ready, and kind of pass it along to the next layer. What I want to show you with the data cube is the new functionality where we can actually offset data. So I'm just going to start by bringing in just a table, it doesn't really matter what in this case. And I'm going to add a calculated element step to the data. So data comes in from the table, we do some calculations, this would be the output. So I go to my calculated element, configure, and we add a calculation. And the idea behind this is you can come in and you can add your own custom C# script to the data cube. Now, one fairly large enhancement that we did to this is that you can now reference columns of different rows. So I see a lot of calculations where I need to reference the previous value in my database and do some math or something like that. And doing those type of calculations in a database are kind of a pain, but in Dundas is something that is now very easy to do. So you'll notice I have a revenue column. So I just want to say, I'm going to call this revenue last. I'm not going to do any calculations. I'm just going to return it so that we could do something with it if we wanted to. So there's two ways you can do this. You have these automatic placeholders. And these placeholders basically represent each column within my data. So if I were to take my revenue and edit it, I could actually offset it. So if I added 1 to this, it would be the next row down from what I'm looking at. But you might still want to use revenue in part of your calculation. So I don't think I want to override it here. I'm actually going to define a new placeholder. I'll just call it revenue next based on the revenue column, and I'm going to offset it by 1. So you say, okay, that placeholder is now added, which I can use in my script. So I'll just do a very simple script where I just say return that value. As I said, I don't want to do any math on it. Say, okay, oh, you have to give it a data type. So in this case, double is fine. And now you'll see that I have a new column that's calculated. Revenue last, or next in this case. I've kind of renamed that poorly, but I think you get the idea. So you can always get in and do those cross-row calculations. So very big change. And again, something that was always a pain to do, just using traditional databases. So as promised, I did show you a bunch of changes to the visualizations and some interesting things that you can add to your dashboards now. But there were some other areas in which we added a lot of improvement to the new version of Dundas BI. And one of them, data discovery, actually had a lot of features added, but there are a lot of little ease of use features, so I won't spend any time going into those. But I did just want to mention that if you are using Excel as a data source or flat files, you'll notice that A lot of changes that just made it easier to use, better discovery of data, right? Those types of functionality has been added. The other thing is, you may have noticed while I was in the dashboard, the data analysis panel had a couple of cosmetic changes to make things a little bit easier, even on the data cube. So changes that aren't really worth me mentioning in this webinar, but lots of changes have been made there. Now there is another one I'd like to show you, and that's on the idea of data input. So we added the possibility of data input into version 5 of Dundas BI, and with this new version, we made some of this even easier. So I wanted to share with you a sample, just to show you the types of things that you might do with data input. So you can see here that I'm showing information by customer, and I've got some kind of forecast. Doesn't really matter in this case what I'm actually showing. I know every one of you is going to have different data that you're going to want to display. But I can now actually take action on this data. So a user coming in here might hit the edit button. And I might want to choose what my next step is going to be based on the information that I'm provided. And maybe in this case, I'm just not going to assign it. I'll come back and take a look later. Say OK. So using our write-back system, you can actually do this. And just to be clear, we're not writing this back to the source data. We're writing this to the Dundas data cube. And I'm joining this against my source data, so that your source data is always going to be protected. We never write back to your source. We do allow sort of an override or a pass-through to take place so that you can see these changes. So if you're interested in that, there's definitely a few things that will make this easier to use as well. And that's basically what I was hoping to show you today in terms of new features. So remember that there have been over 100 added, and it's tough for me to ever show you everything. So if you do want specific details, do take a look at our release notes. And in terms of what's next for you as a user, if you're new to Dundas BI and this was kind of your first look, I would recommend that you go and sign up for one of our live demos. We can have someone take you end to end through the platform and answer any questions that you might have. If you've been taking a look at our online content but haven't actually played with the platform, you can certainly grab our online demo and play with the trial that we have online, or you can actually download the platform yourself and install it and use it. But for those of you who have been coming in today, I really do urge you to go over to our support site or reach out to our support folk and make requests. A lot of the features that we add on a regular basis are based on requests from the community. So we are definitely listening to you, and everything is reviewed. 100% of what you guys send us, we take a look at, and if we can do it, we will. Now, if you guys have any specific questions to me, you can reach out to me directly at jeffh, Jeffh, at dundas.com. And I'd love to hear from you if you do have anything. So again, thanks for joining us today. We look forward to any feedback, and we will keep on working to help you build better and more impactful data solutions. And just remember, if you think everything I showed you today was a fair bit, this has just been a minor release. Just wait for what's going to happen with the major that we come out with at the end of the year. Thank you, and bye for now.